In 48 BCE, Julius Caesar arrived in Alexandria. Rome was locked in a brutal civil war, and Caesar followed his rival Pompey to Egypt. But Cleopatra saw something more. She saw opportunity. She saw the most powerful man in the world walk directly into her kingdom, and she planned her move with the precision of a master strategist. On a moonless night, Cleopatra had herself smuggled into Caesar's private chambers inside a rolled carpetor, possibly a linen sack, depending on the account. When the carpet unfurled before Caesar, the world's most feared general found not a desperate queen, but a confident, fearless woman with fire in her eyes and intelligence sharp as a blade. That moment changed both of their destinies. Cleopatra understood Caesar's weaknesses. He admired intelligence, confidence, and boldness. She spoke to him not as a desperate exile, but as a ruler equal to Rome. She reminded him that Egypt was the wealthiest land in the Mediterranean, with grain the Roman people depended on to survive, and she made him see her not as a burden, but as an investment. Caesar agreed to restore her to the throne. The Egyptian civil war that followed was brutal and bloody. The palace burned. The Library of Alexandria suffered irreparable loss. Cleopatra fought not from a royal seat, but beside Caesar's legions, commanding strategy, delivering speeches, and rallying Egyptians who had never seen a queen so determined to defend her land. By the end of the war, Ptolemy XIII was dead drowned in the Nile while trying to flee. Cleopatra was queen once more. Not long after, she gave birth to a son, Ptolemy V, whom she named Caesarion, Little Caesar. Whether Caesar truly acknowledged him or not remains debated, but Cleopatra believed he was the rightful heir to both Egypt and Rome. She sailed to Rome in triumph, living near Caesar's villa, celebrated as a goddess and a monarch. But her victory was short-lived. On the Ides of March 44 BC, Caesar was murdered in the Senate. Panic swept Rome. Cleopatra understood instantly that her future in the city was over. Without Caesar, she was surrounded by wolves. She returned to Egypt with her son and began to rule independently. She rebuilt the economy, stabilized the administration, reopened trade routes, and strengthened Egypt's defenses. For a moment, Cleopatra's Egypt stood tall, independent, wealthy, powerful. But Rome was not finished with her. After Caesar's death, two men rose to power: Octavian, Caesar's heir, and Mark Antony, his loyal general. The Roman world was divided. Antony controlled the eastern provinces, and Cleopatra knew what she had to do. She sailed to meet him in Tarsus on a golden barge, sails of purple, silver oars cutting through the river like moonlit blades. Perfume filled the air, musicians played softly, and Cleopatra appeared not as a queen, but as the embodiment of the goddess Isis. Antony was stunned, but Cleopatra did not come to seduce him. She came to negotiate. Egypt needed protection. Antony needed money. Their alliance began as political strategy, but soon, ambition turned into passion. Antony followed Cleopatra to Alexandria, where they lived in luxury and intellectual companionship. They formed a society called the Inimitable Livers, hosting feasts that became legend. But beneath the laughter and wine was something deeper: the merging of two powerful political forces. Cleopatra bore him twins Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene. Later, she had a third child, Ptolemy Philadelphus, and for a moment, Cleopatra believed she had secured Egypt's future. But Rome began whispering. Octavian, Antony's rival, spread propaganda portraying Cleopatra as a treacherous foreign queen, manipulating Antony. Statues in Rome showed her with serpent-like features. Senators called her a witch, a temptress, an Eastern threat. The truth was simpler. Cleopatra represented an independent power Rome could not control. Antony eventually returned to Rome, married Octavian's sister, and tried to balance his duties with his heart. But the political marriage could not erase his loyalty to Cleopatra. When he returned to Egypt once more, Octavian declared Antony a traitor and Cleopatra the enemy of Rome. The stage was set for the war that would end the ancient world. The Battle of Actium in 31 BCE was a disaster. Cleopatra's fleet fought fiercely, but Octavian's general Agrippa outmaneuvered them. As flames spread across the sea, Cleopatra made a desperate choice. She withdrew, hoping to regroup. Antony followed her. abandoning the battle. The moment sealed their fate. Octavian marched toward Egypt. Antony's forces deserted him. Cleopatra retreated to her mausoleum, a magnificent tomb she had secretly prepared, possibly not for her burial, but as a fortress of final resistance. She stored treasure inside, threatening to burn it if Octavian dared take her alive. But betrayal found her once more. Antony received false news that Cleopatra was dead. Overwhelmed by despair, he drew his sword and fell upon it, but he did not die immediately. When Cleopatra heard of this, she ordered her servants to bring him to her. They lifted his bleeding body into her arms inside the mausoleum. Antony died there, held by the woman who had changed his life forever. Octavian entered Alexandria victorious. Cleopatra knew what he wanted. Not her death, her humiliation. He planned to parade her through the streets of Rome like a chained trophy, a symbol of Rome's triumph over the East. But Cleopatra had never bowed to Rome, and she would not start now. On August 12th, 30 BCE, Cleopatra dressed in royal robes. She took one last look at her palace, her children, and the city she had fought her entire life to protect. Then, according to tradition, she allowed a venomous asp to bite her, ending her life on her own terms. When Octavian entered her chamber, he found her lifeless on a golden couch, surrounded by the symbols of her reign. He had won the war, but lost the prize he desired most: Cleopatra alive. Her death marked the end of ancient Egypt as an independent civilization. Rome annexed it, and the world entered a new imperial age. But Cleopatra left behind something far greater than an empire. She left a legacy that has survived for over 2,000 years. The story of brilliance, courage, and defiance. A woman who challenged the greatest empire on earth and dared to stand as its equal. A queen whose intellect frightened her enemies so much that they rewrote her story to destroy her. But history remembers. And tonight, so do we. If this story moved you, subscribe to the Royal Era for more legendary chapters from the past, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Cleopatra's true story deserves to be heard, and her voice deserves to rise again.